Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today I'm excited to introduce you to Craig Deegan from the UK by Skype with the Cracklock Saga. So book 1 is Fae or Foe, and book 2 gets even a little bit darker with The Lost and the Departed. And they add so many great elements to it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. How did you get into the fairy world?
Oh, now that's a story in itself. My daughter, I used to have to read these fairy storybooks to my daughter. There are a whole raft of them, and they're all the same story. It's two girls, meet fairy, monsters attack, monsters boss attacks, girls outwit the monster, end of story. And these things, they're all the same book, and there's hundreds of them, but she loved them growing up. And I used to have to read them. By the time I got to about the 10th one, I was really starting to get to the point where I didn't really like fairies very much anymore on the basis of these stories. And that's what got me thinking about, well, what would happen if somebody didn't like fairies, and what would they do about it? And this was maybe 7, 8 years ago now. And that's really how the Cracklocks were born. It was the fact that I wondered, what would somebody do if they didn't like fairies? How would they act around them? What could they actually do? And being a bit of a horror fan, a little darker, that's what I came up with.
They were a little darker. I was so excited when I got the box. I was just, I strongly recommend that anybody starts the series, gets the box with the first 2 books, because you can't put it down. It's impossible. I love that I got my Hagstone. Can you explain the purpose?
Okay. What a hagstone is, it's a stone that's been naturally worn by water. So it's got a hole in it. And the theory goes, the history goes behind it all, that if you look through that hole, it enables you to see the fairy world. I mean, traditionally they were used to keep away witches or hags, and it kind of evolved from there into having this thing that you can actually look through and see the hidden world, the world that is beyond our eyes. When you're very young, you're supposed to be able to see fairies until you kind of you become more au fait with the world, and then you sort of lose that little bit of magic that you have, so you can no longer see them. So the Hagstones are primarily to be able to see the Fae, and that's how they kind of build into the books for those who aren't lucky enough to be able to see them.
Oh, it's such a wonderful adventure, especially when the main character's friends couldn't really see or understand what was going on, and then they use the stone. I was like, I was just so absorbed in the whole series. I can't wait. How many books are going to be in the series?
There's definitely going to be 6, maybe 7. It depends if I can finish the story arc for this particular set of the Cracklocks within 6 books. I've just published book 3 this week on the 1st of February. That's Alice and the Mirror Glass, which is this one. So unfortunately I wasn't able to send it to you in time. I didn't see it on the camera there, but it's behind me on the picture that side. Mm-hmm. Book 4 is finished. Book 4 is called Dire Sorrows. I've finished that in the middle of December. That's now in the sort of the editing, and my sort of beta readers are having a look at that at the moment. And I'm about 16,000 words into book 5, which the working title is The Coins of the Realms. I may change that. I'm not entirely sold on it yet. So certainly 5 books in so far, predicting 6, maybe 7.
So give us a little background on the bad guys.
Oh, on the Cracklocks themselves. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
without giving away the story, but I just love the whole premise that you set up around them. It was perfect.
okay, brilliant. Thanks so much. Right. Okay. Well, the Cracklocks. Well, all of the Cracklocks. They're a family that can see fairies. They don't need hagstones. They don't need gimmicks or any kind of technology to do it. It came about through, without wishing to give too much away, of fairy interference in their family tree over the years. There was a swap here, there was a fairy marriage there, and it all kind of takes place in our realm. Anyway, it transcribes as they all come together through all these various chains, and there's one of them that is born that can see fairies, and he is the kind of the founder of the Cracklock line. And it kind of goes from there. Again, without trying to give too much away, is what happens is one of the strands of the family has a bad experience, I think it's fair to say, with the Fae, and she starts to view them as being not necessarily the lovable creatures that we do, but as something that's to be feared, something to be scared of, and that then grows into a whole different kind of rage against them. Rage is probably a strong word, but a hatred of them, certainly. And that's when she decides to take the battle to them. And they don't tolerate them. They get rid of them as soon as they can. Fortunately, there is another strand of the family who, again, can still see the fairies, but who are still enamoured with them. You know, they still believe in the wonder of them. They're very small in number. And that is the part of the family to which our protagonist belongs to. So
he's like yeah, but you know, he's kind of like a serial killer.
Yeah. Are you talking about Benedict now, the son? Or they're all He's Benedict is a particularly nasty character. He's they're kind of interbreed within the family. They're very close. The Cracklocks are. They unfortunately he's a result of the family's shall we say intermarriages throughout the years. He is a particularly nasty character, as you've highlighted. I would say certainly sociopathic, almost psychopathic, but he kind of is led on by his mother and his uncle Malchiah. And in book 2, you get to meet the matriarch of the family, Agatha, who is a particularly nasty piece. So I loved writing her. I had to do quite a lot of research into how to try and shape her character. But yeah, the bad Cracklocks are bad. The good Cracklocks are a little whimsy, I think.
I like how the whole adventure just unraveled. The iron, the elements that you added, it was just great. The iron, the brownies, is it kobolds, bogarts. There's so many different things going on. And then I love the whole underlying tone of anti-bullying, the community issues with race, the whole family dynamics when you have the really bad side and you have, you know, somewhat normal side. And then this missing character that we learn about throughout the book is really key. That was just good. And then the Bat family really reminded me a lot of history and witch trials and the Puritans.
Yeah, that's kind of what I based them on. So when I first came up with the concept for the Cracklocks, as I say, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I've been throwing the idea around for a while, and it was an author friend of mine that said, you know, you really need to write this and sort of describe it. But then I couldn't think, well, why would somebody hate the Fae? Why would they hate them? I know that I want them to, but why would they? And it was the Salem witch trials and things like that. I watched a documentary on it, and that's what kind of triggered it. And all of a sudden, I was on holiday in Spain, and I took my computer with me. I tried to do a bit of writing every day. And all of a sudden, it just clicked. And that was the reason why. And it was to do with certainly it came from the witch trials. Again, without trying to give too much away, but that is one of the reasons why, well, the main reason why the family split and they became how they did, how they viewed the Fae was off the back of that. So there is some elements of witchery in there, I think it's fair to say.
Well, for me, it led me to investigate things and go back and look at history a little bit, just because of the way that it's all wound together. It's also very good at being aware of strangers and staying away from them. Yes, like, make sure your parents know where you're going, even if it's just down the street.
Or through a portal.
Yeah, just that. But it was just so well hidden in there, and you just kept going. But it just stayed with you long after you put it down. I couldn't wait to read the rest.
Oh, that's awesome. That's all an author can strive to do, really, is tell a story that makes somebody think, yeah, I quite like that. I wonder what's next. Yeah, so that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, I read the first few chapters and I'm like, wait, Faye, this is really getting scary. And then I was like, what is he going to do to my characters? So.
Yeah, but one of my friends started reading it when the first book came out in September, and she started reading it. And she rang me up 2 days later and said, "This is so dark. What are you doing about? Why are you writing like this?" I said, "Well, it gets better. It gets slightly less dark, I think, as we go along. I mean, there is an element of darkness to it. Any family that wants to bump the Fae off really is not going to be particularly nice, but." Yeah, it was very interesting how some people have viewed it, because I've got some friends who are horror readers, and they were like, "Yeah, we can really see your horror kind of background coming in here." But then I've got other fans. I've got an 8-year-old who is a child at my wife's school where she teaches, who she's a voracious reader. I mean, she's read Narnia, she's read Harry Potter, and she's 8 years old, and she was so interested about this. So I gave her a copy of the book, and I gave it to her mother first and said, "Do you want to take a look at this?" And the mum read it and was like, "Yeah, she'll be fine with this." And I was like, okay. And she bombarded me with questions about it, all things, what are grockles, what are grackles, what are this, what are that, what are the other. And I answered them all, and she left me a glowing review at the end of it on a mum's account. So it's nice it was kind of be able to be accessed by somebody like that, but it's not really intended for younger children. It is more the young adult upwards, I think, is my real market for this.
Yeah, I think it's more middle school could definitely get into it, high school, and adults. I loved it. So tell me about the chocolate was in this box.
Okay. That chocolate is absolutely delicious. It's one of the best chocolates I've ever had, and it was my go-to during the writing. I'm a chocoholic when I write. I'm not one of these whiskey swilling authors or anything like that. I like a coffee and something sweet in everyone. And that I picked it up completely by accident because it was on offer in our local store, and I got it home, and my children descended on it like a pack of rabid dogs, as they tend to do, and I managed to salvage a little bit, and it's like, this is absolutely wonderful. So I bought another bar of it and ate that. And what I've tried to do, because they are an independent chocolate company, these guys, and I've got no tie-in with them. I just love their product, and I always try and send some out to people who I like to send the gift boxes to as part of the package. They do a sea salt and caramel one and all kinds of things, but I prefer the milk chocolate one myself. What do you think?
It's so good. I have been waiting so long to try this chocolate bar.
You have to hide it away once you finish. Make sure nobody else gets it, because they're not massive bars.
It's actually massive compared to candy bars in the States. They're a little smaller. It is so delicious.
Yeah, it can be. It's very sweet.
It is, but it just. It has like a nice cocoa chocolatey taste.
Yeah, it's superb. Can't fault it. I absolutely loved it. Still do. I've got some here in my drawer.
So it definitely helps with the writing then.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a bit of a chocoholic when it comes to writing. I try and do normally about 500 words a day. That's my set target, because I write part-time. I work full-time as well.
What's your background?
I'm a chemist. I'm a regulatory chemist. That's what I deal with day in, day out. So it's pretty far flung from what I actually write. The background with the writing really is I do it for pleasure and always have, and I've written short stories and things, and it was really writing this. Books 1 and 2, when I first wrote it, was one long novel. It was 210,000 words long, and it was far too long, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'm a complete novice. And I was speaking to some friends of mine, and they're like, yeah, you want to split it and all this sort of stuff. And well, then where do we split it? And so I've agonised over it for months before I published it. It was ready, really, in maybe, the end of 2020, really. It took me 9-10 months to get around to doing it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a full day regulatory chemist, and I write part-time. And it was only when my wife read it in its entirety, she said, you might have something here. People might want to read this. Because she's read some of my short stories, and they're very much, a lot of them are horror-based. And she kind of said, well, somebody, you really want to think about, maybe somebody might want to publish this, I want to actually look into it and seriously think about it. And that's what got me thinking, well,
you have to thank her. That was the best advice, because I love it. And so do so many other people. It's just crazy, wonderful adventure. And it is definitely different than any other fairy book out there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's due to my dark roots, I'm afraid. It's quite so subtly different to other ones. I didn't want a fae romance book or sort of a person meets fae prince kind of book. There's nothing wrong with those, absolutely. They're not books that I read. And I wanted an adventure, I wanted a protagonist that could be believable. A middle-aged man like myself is probably not going to be the most believable subject to be a protagonist initially, which kind of made me settle on Jack himself. Jack's kind of based on me. I mean, I had the paper route, and the massive hill that starts at it was the one that was on my paper route way back in the dim and distant past. And some of the characters on that paper route, Sergeant Tubbs, who I talk about, he was one of the guys who was insisting on having his paper before 7 a.m. every morning. So Jack is very much, that part of him is based on me, but his personality isn't. His personality kind of evolved naturally as I was writing the character. A few of the other characters are based on people that I know. I won't say who, because they don't know. I'm sure that they know now that they've read the books, but I won't say embarrass them, because I know some of them don't want to be the fae that are in there. But anyway, that's another story.
Oh, that's funny. And I like, so through kind of, well, it's not really throughout. I mean, we all think Jack's, I can't really say anything without giving something away. I like the whole sideline of what they're searching for as it comes up. And the way that you developed it was it was really twisted.
Cool. You can say. I mean, I don't mind. I know that they're looking for his father.
Well, I don't want to give it away, because I want people to read it, because it is so much fun to read. It's so enjoyable and scary, and you just can't put it down. It's addictive. It's kind of like this chocolate. I hope I can get it in the United States.
Well, just ping me and I'll send you a few bars over. I don't mind doing that. Okay. You'll find out all about what what happened to David in book 3. That's where he really comes into it. He has been up to I won't say, he's been up to things that have attracted the attention of a shadowy US governmental organization, almost like the Men in Black. They're not the Men in Black, but they are very similar. And what he's been up to becomes apparent in book 3 as to where he has gone, and also what the guys need to start doing to try and get him back. Book 3 is very much focused on that.
So what kind of books did you read growing up that helped influence this type of work?
Oh, that's a good question. I was as I've mentioned before. I was kind of weaned on horror. I love Stephen King. He's my absolute favourite. And his Dark Tower series, there's 7 books in that, were my all-time favourite. It was really that kind of fantasy stuff, and The Eyes of the Dragon, which is linked to it, The Wind Through the Keyhole and so on, that made me start to like the fantasy element with a little twist of horror thrown in for spiciness. The Harry Potter books, obviously, Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief, all those kind of ones. I've been reading quite a few more fantasy ones recently, so the J.M. Reid books, that sort of thing. But I beta read as well for a number of authors, but they tend to be again something completely different. They're zombie apocalypse stories, so things like The Walking Dead. So as far removed from this as we can physically get. So really, my influences, I suppose, are Stephen King. Dean Koontz to some extent, James Herbert, he was a British horror author. But I didn't want the Cracklocks to be too horrible. I know that there's certainly dark elements in there, but I didn't want them to be really ridiculously scary, horrible. I've had to rewrite parts of book 4, Dire Sorrows, because it was starting to drift into the horror rather than fantasy. And my beaters that have come back so far have said, yeah, you've done a good job on that. It seems to be pretty good. But book 4 focuses on the US Cracklocks, but back in the early 17th century. It tells the story of those and what kind of happened. So
that's interesting. Well, I haven't had a book that was this much fun. Like, you were so good at drawing emotion out. I literally laughed out loud. Benedict made me really screech and go, wow, what?
Sorry.
No, it was great. Like, you just evoke so many feelings that, as a reader, that you get so into it that you're like, ooh, and you just voice it. It's funny, It's a good thing I didn't work out in the gym that day. But It was just great. It was just this exciting adventure. And then I'd bring it with me to, because it took just a couple days for the 2 books, but at appointments going on, so I'd bring it with me and I'd be like, oh, just one more page. I'll be right there.
Well, I can't ask for any more than that. That's awesome to hear. Thank you so much.
I know it was just so well drafted, edited. The chapters were well laid out. That gave us, a little breather room to take a break. Like, it was okay. Even though there were a couple nights where I had to stay up really late.
That's great. I had my editing, the editors that I use were really good. They certainly on the first read through of book 1, I tried to put emotion into it, try and put the description and the emotion into it, and they did pick me up on a few parts and said, look, this has happened here. They're not going to be like, oh, that's great, and carry on. We need to really cover this off. And it was really their advice and their comments that built it into how it is today. The formatting, we've tried to make it look nice. We've tried to stop the chapters at such a point that if you are reading it and it gets to 1 o'clock in the morning, you can stop and pick it up again the next day without losing the thread. I think it's fair to say we try and bounce the chapters accordingly. But yeah, I've been very pleased. And my cover artist, we worked very hard on the cover. I'm still kind of thinking, is it too childish, the first one? My wife actually likes book 2's cover the best. She thinks that's her favourite, which is, again, is a little bit darker there. You'll know which part of the story that is, where he is there.
It definitely takes a darker turn, but it was wonderfully well crafted, storytelling wise, to the way it's laid out, to the cover. It was such a wonderful story. I just can imagine that you have so many people that are going to enjoy it.
Thank you. They certainly say it's picking up momentum now. As I say, I only published the first book in September last year. The second book was the just Halloween weekend, and then, as I say, the third book came out just this week on Tuesday, 1st of Feb. I think a lot of people, when they tend to be series, sometimes people want the whole series in case they want to binge them. But certainly the feedback I'm getting from people is, when's the next one? When's the next one? When's the next one? And I know people are now reading book 3. I can see it on the Kindle page reads, and I'm just waiting because book 3 ends in a huge cliffhanger. Not a one that's going to make you think, oh, that didn't tie in too well, but it does end on a pretty big cliffhanger, which then picks directly up in book 4. So I'm waiting for the people to start privately messaging me and demanding art copies and things like that. I've already had a few already asking me, what can we need? So
Yeah, I don't mind being a better reader for this. I'll be happy to read it before you go out front.
Would you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Right, well, I'll tell you
keep
what.
me in.
Okay, well, if you want to say, as I say, I can send you an art copy of book 3 if you'd like. That's not a problem. That's available now.
Yes, please. I can't wait
Yes.
for them to come out. So are you going to do audio?
Yeah, that's something that's in the pipeline. Certainly, as you'll know. I mean, audiobooks are quite expensive to produce. If we're going to do an audiobook, I want to do it right. I want the right voice to voice it. And finding that person, I haven't really started looking. I've kind of been looking at some of the prices and thought, oh yeah, okay, that seems quite a lot. But so I'm now putting pennies in the pot, as we say, to look at getting book 1 done as an audio, and depending on how well that's received, we'll then certainly do the others. It's kind of a balancing act. It's getting people interested enough to want to have the audio. And then from there, we'll certainly take it forward. But yeah, the audio, hopefully in the next year or so, certainly. That's the plan.
Well, I have not been this excited since Harry Potter. And I love Harry Potter. Like, I would wait at the stores to get the book, and I would wait at a store to get your book. This series was really good.
Thank you.
And I like the cellophane, and I like the way that something similar comes up in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah,
It's very creative, all of it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me today. It's been so much appreciated. And I'm really glad to hear that you enjoyed them, because that's all the author ever wants to do, is have a book that people enjoy. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Until next time, keep asking questions. And if you're looking for an exciting, wicked, exciting escape, the Cracklock Saga will not let you down. Make sure you get the first 2. You'll definitely want the 3rd. We'll see you soon.